The sun had barely risen over the small coastal town of Willow Bay when the aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifted through Harbor Café, a humble, family-run diner known for its homemade pies and friendly service. It was a place where fishermen came before dawn, and locals lingered over breakfast long after their plates were empty. Behind the counter, Lila, a young woman in her early 20s, tied her hair into a neat ponytail and straightened her apron. She moved with quiet grace, polite, efficient, and calm, no matter how chaotic the morning rush became. Few customers knew that she wasn't just a waitress. She was the daughter of the cafe's owner, George Bennett, a kind man with a white beard and a gentle laugh. But George had always taught her humility. If you want to run a business, Lila, he often said, you must learn every job in it. And so, she worked under an alias, simply Lila the waitress. No one, not even her co-workers, knew she was the boss's daughter. That morning, as she refilled coffee cups and balanced plates, a sleek black car pulled up outside. The man who stepped out wore a designer suit, shiny shoes, and a smirk that didn't quite match the warmth of the diner. His name was Derek Cole, a businessman who'd recently moved to town after buying up several local properties. When he entered, conversation in the cafe dipped slightly. Derek was known for his arrogance, especially toward people he considered below his level. Lila smiled anyway. "Good morning, sir. Table for one." He nodded curtly and sat by the window. "Just coffee. Make it quick," he muttered, not even looking at her. Lila served him without complaint, but Derek's disdainful glance lingered as she walked away, as though even her apron offended him. By mid-morning, the cafe buzzed with chatter. Regulars joked with the cooks, and the bell above the door chimed endlessly. Derek, however, seemed immune to the atmosphere. He kept scrolling on his phone, occasionally sighing as if time itself inconvenienced him. When Lila returned with his breakfast, pancakes, eggs, and fresh fruit, he looked at the plate and scoffed. "This isn't what I ordered." Lila blinked. "I'm sorry, sir. You asked for the breakfast combo, right?" He leaned back. "I said I wanted scrambled eggs, not fried. Do you people even listen?" Her cheeks flushed. "I can have that changed right away." "Forget it," he snapped. "You'll probably ruin it again." He shoved the plate aside and tossed a handful of coins on the table. They clattered loudly, a few rolling onto the floor. "That's your tip," he sneered. "Maybe it'll buy you some manners." The cafe went silent. Heads turned. Even the cook paused mid-swipe of a spatula. Lila stared at the scattered coins, then slowly bent down to pick them up. Her hands trembled, not from humiliation, but restraint. Years of her father's lessons echoed in her mind. Grace under pressure shows more strength than anger ever will. When she stood again, she smiled, small but steady. "Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful day." Derek smirked. Unbelievable. A waitress who still smiles after being insulted. He left without another word, slamming the door behind him. But his arrogance had been witnessed by everyone, and whispers followed him as he drove away. After the incident, the cafe buzzed with quiet anger. Several customers offered comforting words, but Lila just shrugged it off and went back to work. She never told her father what had happened. George, busy in the back office, had enough to worry about. But Martha, the head cook and longtime family friend, noticed. "That man's got no soul," she muttered. "If your father had seen that..." Lila smiled faintly. "Dad would tell me to forgive him." By closing time, she was exhausted. The coins, Derek's tip, were still in her apron pocket. She thought of throwing them away, but instead placed them in the charity jar by the register labeled Meals for Kids. The next morning, George asked her to help him prepare for a meeting. The cafe was being considered for a major partnership. A business investor wanted to help them expand across the region. The investor's name? Derek Cole. Lila's heart dropped. She kept quiet, unwilling to ruin the opportunity for her father's dream. When Derek walked in that afternoon, he looked around with an expression of polite disinterest. He didn't recognize her at first. The same girl he had humiliated the day before. George came out from the back, beaming. "Mr. Cole, welcome to Harbor Cafe. I'm George Bennett, and this is my daughter, Lila." Derek froze, his face drained of color. "The daughter?" Lila smiled, calm and composed. "We met yesterday," she said softly. "I serve you coffee." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. For the first time, Derek's confidence cracked. I didn't know. I thought." George looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" Lila waved it off. "Mr. Cole was just a customer yesterday. Nothing serious." But her calm tone only made Derek feel smaller. The memory of those clattering coins burned in his mind. He looked down, shame flooding his chest. "Mr. Bennett," he said, voice tight, "I owe you and your daughter an apology. I acted horribly." George smiled kindly. "Well, we all have bad days. Let's focus on business, shall we?" But throughout the meeting, Derek couldn't stop glancing at Lila. The way she spoke with quiet authority. The way she handled paperwork smoothly, understanding every detail of the contract. She wasn't just kind. She was sharp, educated, and confident. He realized she wasn't a simple waitress. She was a woman with depth, one he had completely misjudged. For the first time, Derek's confidence cracked. I didn't know. I thought." George looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" Lila waved it off. "Mr. Cole was just a customer yesterday. Nothing serious." But her calm tone only made Derek feel smaller. The memory of those clattering coins burned in his mind. He looked down, shame flooding his chest. "Mr. Bennett," he said, voice tight, "I owe you and your daughter an apology. I acted horribly." George smiled kindly. "Well, we all have bad days. Let's focus on business, shall we?" But throughout the meeting, Derek couldn't stop glancing at Lila. The way she spoke with quiet authority. The way she handled paperwork smoothly, understanding every detail of the contract. She wasn't just kind. She was sharp, educated, and confident. He realized she wasn't a simple waitress. She was a woman with depth, one he had completely misjudged. Months passed. Derek invested in upgrading Harbor Cafe's equipment, expanding seating, and even sponsoring local events under the cafe's name. He and George became unlikely partners, and eventually friends. Meanwhile, Lila saw the change firsthand. Derek stopped acting like the world owed him something. He became humble, patient, even kind to strangers. One rainy afternoon, the cafe was packed. A young waitress accidentally spilled coffee on Derek's suit. The entire room froze, remembering his past temper. But Derek only smiled and said, "No harm done." Then he handed the waitress a napkin and helped her clean up. Lila saw the scene from behind the counter and felt something warm stir in her heart. Later that night, as the cafe closed, Derek approached her again. "You know," he said quietly, "when I first came here, I thought I was above everyone. But this place, your father, you taught me humility." She smiled. "Then maybe that was the real deal you came for." A year later, Harbor Cafe reopened after a major renovation. The one small diner had become a beautiful, bustling restaurant, complete with outdoor seating and a community stage for local musicians. The sign above the door now read, "Harbor Cafe, a place built on kindness." Lila walked to the crowd at the grand reopening, greeting old customers and new ones alike. Derek stood beside her father, helping greet guests, no longer the arrogant businessman he once was, but a genuine friend. As the evening sun bathed the cafe in gold, George took the microphone. "This place has always been about heart," he said. "And sometimes life reminds us that kindness is the best investment of all." He handed the mic to Lila, who smiled at the crowd. "When you choose grace over pride," she said, "you never really lose." Then she turned toward Derek, who smiled back, humbled, grateful, changed. The same man who once threw coins at her now treated every person with respect. And though no one ever mentioned that day again, both of them remembered it well. Not as a wound, but as a moment that transformed two very different lives forever.